The vast auditorium hummed with quiet anticipation. Rows of empty seats stretched upward like steps toward the ceiling, their cushions still bearing the dust of disuse. At the front of the hall, the projector screen glowed faintly with the university's emblem, waiting for the day's presentation. Dr. Malcolm Hayes stepped inside, his leather laptop bag slung over one shoulder. A tall black man in his 40s. His posture carried the quiet confidence of someone used to standing before crowds. He moved with deliberate calm, setting his bag gently on the front row desk before pulling out a stack of neatly bound research notes. He adjusted his glasses and powered on his laptop, the hum of the machine filling the silence. His fingers moved with practiced ease, preparing slides that contained equations, star charts, and photographs from recent experiments. But while Malcolm was focused on his work, another pair of eyes was fixed on him. Karen, sitting halfway up the auditorium with her teenage son, stiffened the moment she noticed him. Her lips pressed into a tight line. She wasn't a faculty member nor a student, just a parent touring the campus. And yet, in her mind, she decided instantly that the man didn't belong. Her gaze sharpened as Malcolm spread his notes, reviewing a formula under his breath. To her, it wasn't preparation, it was suspicious. She leaned closer to her son, whispering, "He's not a professor. Look at him. What's he even doing here?" Her son shrugged uncomfortably, but Karen's suspicion only grew. She watched every keystroke, every page he turned, every calm motion he made as he prepared for his colleague's arrival. To her, it wasn't diligence she saw. It was intrusion. And as Malcolm adjusted the projector cables, unaware of the storm about to break, Karen's frown deepened. She had already decided. She wasn't going to let this stranger stay. Karen gathered her purse and stormed down the steps of the lecture hall, her heels clicking against the concrete. Each step carried her closer to the man at the front and closer to the argument she'd already written in her head. Dr. Malcolm Hayes looked up briefly as she approached, his expression polite but puzzled. "Good afternoon," he said with a nod before returning to his laptop. Karen ignored the greeting. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice carrying through the otherwise empty hall. "What exactly are you doing here?" Malcolm paused, then turned to face her fully. "I'm preparing for a presentation. This hall is reserved for today's lecture." Karen let out a short, sharp laugh. "A presentation? Please. Do you really expect me to believe that? Professors don't just wander in like this. Who gave you permission to be here?" Her tone was loud enough that a few early arriving students near the doorway stopped to glance inside. Their eyes flicked between Karen, red-faced and demanding, and the man she was addressing, calm and composed. "I have every right to be here," Malcolm replied evenly, keeping his voice measured. "This room was scheduled for my team's research briefing." Karen folded her arms, her chin tilted high. "Don't lie to me. I've been on this campus all day. I know who the professors are, and you are not one of them." Her son, still seated further up, shifted uncomfortably and muttered, "Mom, maybe—" But she cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't try to play games with me," she pressed on, pointing at Malcolm's laptop. "What are you really doing with that computer? Downloading files? Hacking into the system? People like you don't just prepare lectures." Gasps rose from the doorway as a couple of students exchanged stunned looks. One of them whispered, "Is she serious?" Dr. Hayes didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm presence stood in stark contrast to Karen's escalating fury. "I assure you," he said, meeting her glare steadily, "I am exactly where I'm supposed to be." But Karen wasn't listening. She had already decided he was a trespasser, and she was determined to prove it. Her next step would take the situation even further. Karen's voice rose louder, echoing against the walls of the auditorium. "You need to leave this hall immediately before I call someone who can make you leave." Dr. Malcolm Hayes closed his laptop gently, his composure unshaken. "Ma'am, I've told you already. I belong here. My colleagues will be arriving shortly." But Karen wasn't interested in explanations. She pulled her phone from her purse with a dramatic flourish, dialing the campus security number. "Hello?" "Yes," she said loudly, ensuring the students at the back could hear every word. "There's a man in the lecture hall who shouldn't be here. He's trespassing, and I think he's trying to access university equipment. You'd better send someone quickly before this gets out of hand." Her words rippled through the room like a spark. Students whispered to one another, some exchanging incredulous looks, others shaking their heads. One muttered, "She's calling security on a professor?" Malcolm remained calm, his steady gaze fixed on Karen. "I've asked you politely to stop making assumptions. I will wait for security to arrive. Then perhaps you'll see the truth." Karen scoffed, pacing in front of him as though she were the guardian of the hall. "Oh, I'll see the truth, all right. And so will everyone else. You'll be escorted out, and maybe then you'll think twice about pretending to be something you're not." At that moment, two faculty members entered at the back, startled by the raised voices. They froze, trying to understand the scene, while a group of students whispered louder, their phones now discreetly recording. The atmosphere shifted. What began as Karen's outburst was no longer just a quarrel. It was becoming a public spectacle. And with campus security on their way, the tension was only about to rise higher. Moments later, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Two campus security officers entered the lecture hall, their radios crackling faintly. The chatter in the room hushed as all eyes turned to them. Karen wasted no time rushing forward, her voice dripping with triumph. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man has no business in this hall. He was messing with the equipment and refuses to leave. I told you he was trespassing." She jabbed a finger toward Dr. Malcolm Hayes, who remained seated at the front, his laptop now closed, his notes neatly stacked. His posture was calm, his expression composed, a striking contrast to her flustered energy. One of the officers looked at Karen, then at Malcolm. "Sir, can we ask what you're doing here?" Malcolm spoke in his steady, measured tone. "I am here to give a scheduled research presentation. My name is Dr. Hayes. My team and I reserved this hall." Karen barked out a laugh, loud and mocking. "Oh, please, don't fall for that. He's no scientist. Look at him. He's making this all up. If he were really some big researcher, wouldn't people know who he is? Don't let him fool you." The students in the back shifted uneasily. One whispered, "She's really saying that out loud?" Another muttered, "She's digging herself deeper." Phones discreetly caught every moment. The officers exchanged uncertain glances. One of them asked, "Do you have identification, sir?" Malcolm calmly reached into his briefcase, pulling out his university badge and a folder with the lecture's official schedule. He handed them over without a hint of anger. "You'll find my name printed right there," he said evenly. Karen scoffed again, her arms crossed. "Fake. He probably made that on a printer. I'm telling you, he doesn't belong here. He's pretending to be something he's not. Do your job and remove him before this gets embarrassing." But the irony was already taking shape. Around the hall, more students had gathered, their eyes locked on the unfolding scene. A couple of faculty members had stepped closer, whispering urgently among themselves, their faces pale with recognition. The humiliation Karen wanted for Malcolm was beginning to turn in another direction. As the tension thickened, the lecture hall doors swung open again. Two professors entered, their arms full of binders and laptops. They froze at the sight of campus security standing before the stage, Karen pointing furiously at Dr. Hayes, and a circle of students watching in silence. "Dr. Hayes?" Professor Alvarez called out, surprise in her voice. She hurried down the aisle, her colleague right behind her. "We were just on our way to meet you. Is everything all right?" The crowd stirred. Karen's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before narrowing again. "Oh, don't play games," she snapped. "You know he's not really supposed to be here. You're just trying to cover for him. Professors like you stick together, but security won't be fooled." The second professor, Dr. Singh, looked sharply at Karen. "Cover for him? This man is the lead researcher on the project we're presenting today. Without him, none of this would exist." Whispers erupted across the hall. Students exchanged shocked looks, some shaking their heads. One muttered, "I knew it." She had no idea who he was. The security officers glanced uneasily between the professors and Dr. Hayes, who remained seated, his calm unbroken. He simply folded his hands, as if waiting for the storm to pass. Karen, however, grew more defiant. "Oh, please. Anyone can say that. You're just embarrassed because you let some stranger wander in. I saw him pretending to set up slides like he was giving a real lecture. It's pathetic. Her words rang harshly in the silence, but now the students' eyes were no longer on Dr. Hayes. They were on her. Phones angled higher, capturing every sharp edge of her voice, every denial stacked against the growing evidence. Professor Alvarez turned to the officers, her voice firm. This is absurd. Dr. Malcolm Hayes is one of the most respected astrophysicists in the country. He's here by invitation, and in a few minutes, NASA will be here to acknowledge his contribution. Gasps rippled across the auditorium. The weight of the word NASA silenced even the whispers. Karen laughed, but it was thinner now, forced. NASA? Oh, that's rich. What's next? You'll tell me he's flying to the moon tomorrow? But the officers didn't laugh. The professors didn't laugh. Even the students stopped snickering, because the truth was on its way, and Karen had no idea how close it was. The heavy doors at the back of the lecture hall opened again, this time with a purposeful swing. A group of men and women in dark suits stepped inside, carrying folders stamped with the bold insignia of NASA. Cameras and equipment dangled from their shoulders, their polished shoes clicking against the floor as they advanced. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Karen's smirk faltered. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides as she watched the group stride down the aisle with unmistakable confidence. Dr. Hayes, one of them called warmly, his voice booming across the hall. There you are. The suited team moved directly toward the man Karen had accused, bypassing the officers, the professors, and even her. Their faces were lit with admiration, their hands extended eagerly. Doctor, thank you for agreeing to present your findings today, said the lead representative, clasping Malcolm's hand with both of his. Your research on stellar propulsion has been groundbreaking. We're honored to be here to recognize your work. Gasps rippled through the hall like a shockwave. Students clapped their hands over their mouths. The professors exchanged proud smiles, vindicated. The security officers stiffened, realizing the magnitude of their mistake. Dr. Hayes rose slowly, his calm presence undisturbed by the spectacle. Thank you, he said, his voice steady. I'm glad the work is finally being shared. The NASA officials began setting their folders on the desk, preparing to document and record the event. One placed a metal case discreetly on the table, its engraved seal gleaming under the lights. Karen, pale now, sputtered. Wait, NASA? You can't be serious? Him? He's the one you came for? The lead official turned to her with a puzzled frown. Of course. Dr. Hayes is one of our most valued collaborators. Without his research, we wouldn't be where we are today. All eyes in the room shifted to Karen. Students whispered, phones still recording. The certainty she'd paraded moments ago now collapsed into a silence heavier than the stone walls of the auditorium. For the first time, Karen had no words. The atmosphere in the lecture hall shifted like a tide. Moments earlier, it had been charged with suspicion and mockery. Now it brimmed with awe. Students leaned forward, some already applauding, while faculty members straightened proudly in their seats. Even the security officers stepped back, their earlier suspicion dissolving into respect. Dr. Malcolm Hayes walked calmly toward the stage, flanked by NASA representatives. The metal case glinted under the lights as one of them carried it behind him. Every step he took was steady, measured, the walk of a man who didn't need to prove himself with words. As he mounted the steps and turned to face the audience, the applause swelled, filling the cavernous room. The sound rolled over him, not in vanity, but in recognition of truth long overdue. Karen, still rooted near the front row, looked as if the ground had been pulled from beneath her. Her face flushed, her eyes darted desperately between the applauding crowd and the man she had tried to humiliate. Her earlier confidence had curdled into silence, her voice, once so loud, now strangled by the weight of her mistake. On stage, the lead NASA official addressed the hall. We are here today not only to hear Dr. Hayes present his extraordinary research, but also to thank him for the years of dedication he has given to science and to this country's pursuit of discovery. The applause thundered again. Dr. Hayes inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement, his calm composure unchanged. He didn't look at Karen, didn't need to. The truth had spoken louder than any confrontation could. Behind him, the projector lit up with the first slide of his presentation. Diagrams of propulsion systems, equations sprawled across the screen, the future of exploration taking shape before their eyes. And as he began to speak, the crowd listened in reverent silence. Every student, every professor, every official hanging on his words. Karen sank back into her seat, invisible now in a hall that only moments earlier she had tried to command. The same phones that had recorded her arrogance were now capturing the applause for the man she'd tried to erase. The humiliation was hers alone. The respect was his.